Best in Blue.
Connecting you, the listener, to the everyday inner workings of the Memphis Police Department.
Best in Blue on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
You're listening to the Best in Blue right here on the KUDZUKIAN Network. I am DC, host of this program. On today's show, we're going to have the administrator of the Emergency Communications Bureau, Administrator Michael Spencer, to sit down and talk with us about a few things. So we're going to talk about the emergency communications procedures. We're going to talk about the Text to 911 initiative that's just recently been started by the Memphis Police Department in the city of Memphis. And we're going to talk a little bit about the do's and don'ts of using our 911 system. We want to make sure that our listeners stick around because there are some things that you definitely want to take away from this program on today. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with the Best in Blue right here on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Best in Blue. Best in Blue.
That means we go to the schools, we go to the churches, we do all types of programs to try to build the relationship between law enforcement and the community.
Best in Blue on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Hi, this is Officer Cassandra Leak with the Dare Great program for the Memphis Police Department, and you are listening to the Best in Blue on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Welcome back to the Best in Blue right here on the KUDZUKIAN Network. I'm DC, and as promised, we've got the administrator of the Emergency Communications Bureau with the Memphis Police Department sitting in with us, Mike Spencer. How are you, Mike?
I'm great. Nice to be here.
Good to have you on the show today. Let's talk a little bit about the Emergency Communications Bureau.
We definitely feel like we're one of one of the most important pieces of the Memphis Police Department. Everything starts and ends in communication. So from the beginning of a 911 call coming into us to us dispatching first responders and resources, we keep up with that. We keep the citizens and officers' safety throughout that entire process.
Walk me through the life of a dispatcher once they sign in and they're ready to go.
So we're excited. Definitely want to give a shout out to the employees. Yeah. These employees, like all public service and public safety personnel, are working 24/7, 365 days a year.
Wait, you guys work every day and you don't take off? I mean, come on now.
No, there's a lot of overtime and we have to cover holidays. That's a challenge for our employees, is working through these holidays and giving that commitment to the citizens and the police department in the city of Memphis.
How many dispatchers do you have? Not necessarily per shift, but how many do your whole complement?
So we're authorized for 145 dispatchers right now. So we've got about 35 to 40 a shift currently, and we're always hiring and going through that process.
And your report, we talked a little bit offline, and you were telling me that the bureau that you're now, I think it's kind of been shifted a little bit in terms of responsibility. You now report directly to the Director of Police Services, right?
That's correct. So we went through a reorganization a couple of years ago and kind of realigned who we reported to, how things got done, just to make sure that we were addressing things as quickly and as efficiently as possible.
And now, and with regard to efficiency, and I know we talked about this before, we are now seeing this huge amount of calls. You guys take how many calls a year?
Yeah, we take over 1.2 million total calls. About 600, over 600,000 of those are 911 calls. So about 50 to 55,000 911 calls a month come through our communications center.
1.2 million.
Yeah, that would include our non-emergency, the 545 COPS number that people can call in.
Oh, that's you guys too?
That's us too. So 911 and non-emergency all come through our center, and we assign police services.
Well, I'm not going to give you credit for 311. You don't do 311, right?
We do not do 311.
That is not you, right?
Yeah.
Wow. So you got 545 COPS, and you got 911, and you got 1.2 million calls.
Yes, sir.
You got 145? That's the complement.
That's the complement. Right now, we're right at about 110 full-time employees. We've got about 14 in training, and we've got a hiring process going through right now, doing interviews to fill our last 20 to 21 vacancies.
You're listening to The Best in Blue right here on the KUDZUKIAN Network. Let's talk about the relationship between, and a lot of people may get this confused, when you call for service 911, there's a call for service of a crime or what have you, right? There's a difference between that call and I've got a fire in my kitchen. Let's differentiate that for our listeners, because I think sometimes we believe that that call goes straight to you, and then of course you handle that call. But now you and I were talking a little bit. It's a little bit different than that, correct?
There's some coordination there with the Memphis Fire Services. So the first question, so in the city of Memphis, if you dial 911, you reach the Memphis Police Department's 911 office. The first question we're going to ask you is, do you need police, fire department, or an ambulance? If your answer is fire or an ambulance, we conference their dispatcher on the line, and we stay on there so to make sure that police services aren't needed as well as fire or ambulance.
If an ambulance shows up, isn't there a police car that shows as well too?
A lot of times, just because you think about an accident with injuries or someone was hurt, there may be a need for both departments to respond.
Even in the case of a fire, and I know this is kind of out of your bailiwick a little bit, but I've seen even driving by certain places that were on fire, police were there, and I guess that's what you're lending to. There may be a need for protection of those who are in the area, I guess, on the scene, so to speak.
Yeah, that's
right?
correct. They'll call for traffic control, so it's sometimes the police are supporting the effort, sometimes they're directly involved with the situation that's going on.
How many shifts a day do you all run with these less than 145? I don't know. How do you guys do that?
It's a challenge, but we use a lot of data. So we really, over the last couple of years, started looking at call volume. We took an analytical approach to staffing to make sure that we're putting people on the phones the right times of the day. So the shifts start, every 8 hours is a shift. We start at midnight. We go to 8 to 4 p.m., 4 p.m. to midnight. We do have mandatory overtime, so that's a challenge for our employees. If we don't have enough people show up for work, then we make our people stay over to work. So
we're not going to use that term "make." We just kind of strongly encourage.
Yes.
Well, and that's amazing. So, but now, as you said again, you got a class that's going on. What you said currently, right?
Yes, sir.
And hopefully this will help in that complement. But I'm assuming that you all have no problem with getting either qualified individuals or the administration say, yes, let's get as many people in there taking calls as possible, right?
Yeah, we've worked with the administration and human resources to streamline our hiring process. We moved everything online last year, so they go and apply online. They can schedule their first test online, and it's a pretty streamlined process. The people that are interviewing this week applied back in January, so we've already got interviews. We hope to make job offers by the end of this month or early into May.
Are you encouraged that you'll hit that number that you're looking for?
Yeah, we had 1,600 people apply.
Get out of here.
For the 21 openings.
1,600?
Yes, correct. We have a big pool of applicants. We're really going to take the best, the best of that, and take
to add to the best in blue. No,
that's
doubt,
correct.
Right?
Yes, sir.
And so now, out of 1,600 applicants, and you've been around now 20 years, right?
Yes, sir.
You've seen these huge applicant pools before. Out of all of those, when it comes down to qualifications, good fits, and all of that, typically you probably turn away some pretty good ones as well, though, right?
Yeah, you hate that would ever happen. You know, it's a hiring process that's always a challenge of, what if we miss someone? But yeah, most of our classes have turned out to be good people.
Wow. Is there an opportunity to refer them to the fire department if they need dispatchers?
There is, we see some overlap there. Most people, when they go on the City of Memphis website and they're applying for, positions, if they see the fire dispatcher or police dispatcher open, they're generally going to apply for both of them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, let's stop right there. We've got Administrator Mike Spencer of the Emergency Communications Bureau with the Memphis Police Department right here with us today on The Best in Blue. We'll be right back with more.
Best in Blue.
Riffin' on jazz.
When two friends get together to kick it
about jazz, it's called Riffin' on Jazz.
Catch us riffing on jazz every week right here on your favorite broadcast or podcast platforms.
Riffin' on jazz on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Hey, this is Officer Cassandra Leak with the Memphis Police Department's DARE program. Make sure you check out The Best in Blue on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, KUDZUKIAN.com, or your favorite podcast provider.
We're back with The Best in Blue right here on the KUDZUKIAN Network. Oh, man, I tell you, we are having one heck of a conversation with Mike Spencer, who's the administrator of the Emergency Communications Bureau with the Memphis Police Department. Mike, we were just talking a little bit about, we talked a lot about these 1,600 applicants you got, that's tremendous.
Yes.
That's a huge number of folks that are interested in becoming a part of the Best in Blue.
It is a good job. It's a good career. I've obviously been there 20 years and
been able to feed your family, been able to raise kids, been able to do all these other things.
Yes.
Go on vacations. It's not just, oh God, I'm a poor employee of the city. You get a chance to not only to have a decent living, right? But you also get a chance to do what you love, apparently. Because if you didn't like some of this, you wouldn't be doing any of it, right?
You got to be passionate about a career to make it worthwhile. So I'm passionate about 911 and the things that we're doing in dispatch.
And so of these 1,600 applicants, throw out there a couple of things that you all are really, really looking for that sets aside, let's just say, and there's nothing wrong with it, that sets aside a person who may be better at being a dispatcher than maybe, I don't know, a plumber or something else, you know?
Yeah, I think today's generation, with the amount of information that they take in and process, is really, really good for our field. So multitasking and being able to switch gears a lot, whether it's on the radio or the phones, makes a big deal in ours. So typing is the first one.
Oh, wow.
I can tell you that the first test that we put them through is typing, and we're only requiring 35 words per minute. And we 35? Did not have the percentage of people pass that we wanted to. So, anybody that's interested in it when we go through and hire again is really make sure you can type.
And this may sound kind of odd, but the typing, I think, aren't we down to this so much now with the thumbs, versus, when I went to high school at White Station, I graduated, I could do 99 words a minute, but that was on a typewriter. Who's got a typewriter anymore?
Yeah, we talk about that. We do wonder, but obviously we're using keyboards and mice, and we're using Windows, workstation. Yeah. So there's no real workaround. They're just going to have to brush up on their skills, and that's why we start low, because their speed will build as their career does.
Wow, that's amazing. So that's the kind of person you're looking for. Someone who definitely has that communication experience, right? Someone who doesn't mind talking, because it's a talking job. It's not, I think I'm not going to take this call today. Yeah. That could be somebody's life.
So the other thing I didn't touch on is geography. We deal a lot with, trying to locate people, locate officers. So about 85% of our calls come in through wireless callers now, so mobile phones. So in the old days, or when I started, you had an address and a phone number when people called from their home phone. Yeah. Well, now you're getting the cell phone. Everybody's mobile. You get a lot more calls. You spend some time just working on where are you at. And people don't know, because we're such a mobile society. They try to give you landmarks. But if they say, a gas station on Poplar, that doesn't help us a lot, because
not
there are a lot of gas stations on Poplar.
There's a lot of Poplar Avenue too, right?
Yes.
Wow. So how are we doing with that as a city from a technological standpoint? Are we able to ping out of your area where these folks could be? I mean, does it help us a lot?
It does. So we worked with a company, Rapid SOS, which is kind of an upcomer in the 911 space, but we went live with them last year. It allows us to get the GPS information from cell phones when they call. So our location data is getting better and better. And when they call 911, if there is Rapid SOS location available, we're tracking them in real time, so we can see them moving. That was a big plus for us. It's only about 8 or 9 months old for us, but that's only when they call 911. So there's privacy concerns. We cannot see where you're at once you hang up. We can't see where you're at before you call us.
We just want to get you help, right?
That's correct.
Well, we talked a little bit offline about part-time dispatchers. Mm-hmm. You said you've got a new complement, and this is not the 1,600 we're talking. These are folks that you got that come in on a part-time basis that help supplement your regular staffing, correct?
That's correct. So in communications, we really have two jobs. Most of our police radio dispatchers are doing two jobs.
And you're listening to the Best in Blue right here on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
So half of them are taking 911 calls, and the other half are speaking to the officers on the radio. What we realized that our call volume was a lot higher than anything that we had going on the radio, so we created the part-time 911 call taker position so that we could staff the phones during our peak hours and have more people. And they've really made an impact on our answer times. And that's why today, we're answering over 95% of our calls within 20 seconds, which meets and exceeds the national standards. And we're doing that on a regular monthly basis.
There. You're saying 95% of the calls, within 20 seconds, you got me.
Yeah. And actually, our average answer time for the month of February was less than 6 seconds. So it was like 5.6 seconds from the time you called, we were on the phone with you. That was the average.
And so we're doing pretty well in that space then, right?
Yeah. We're one of the busiest 911 centers in the country. It's hard to get some rankings, but we do believe that we're probably in the top 20 as far as volume. And to be meeting and exceeding those standards is recognized across the country.
Get out of here. I think we talked earlier about there is a particular process where you may have a dispatcher who's talking to the person who's calling in. There's something else that's going on in the background as well, so right?
Yeah, that's really important for the listeners to know. So when you call 911, you have the sole attention of that 911 operator that you're speaking to. They're going to ask a lot of questions, but that's going to aid the first responders. As we're taking those questions in, we're putting it in the computer. That's appearing on the screen for the dispatcher who is relaying that information to the officer. So we don't have any break in the conversation. A lot of times callers are, they ask us to stop asking so many questions and just send help. They don't realize that help has already been started in most cases, and we're just getting additional information that will help those responders.
Now you said you got a caller that says, quit asking so many questions. I'm trying to get you what you need, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm assuming that's what your dispatchers are saying. We're trying to get you the best possible response to your specific need.
Yeah. And that's the customer service aspect of it. So, we do the best that we can to kind of do a PSA and explain what we're doing. But during an emergency, seconds count.
That's right.
We just go through our interview process like we need to, and we get the information that we can.
How is it that, and I'm sure our listeners want to know this because those of us who've never had to call 911, I never had. Thank God I've never had to.
Good.
But those who have, and they give information to them that is sometimes, I don't want to say depressing, but it's challenging to that person who's answering it. You guys are humans. You're not bots, right? So there's no person in Pakistan. These are folks that are homegrown right here in our town taking these calls. How do you folks decompress from a real tough call?
It is a challenge, and that is to switching from call to call. So you could take something very serious, something that really to your core bothers you, or we have people that are going through personal situations in their lives, and some of these calls might hit home, or they may even take a call from someone that they know or a family member. So challenges there. As far as decompression, we have breaks, scheduled breaks throughout the day. We encourage our employees, if they need to take a break, to let us know. We have a quiet room where they can go and relax, for a period of time after a call. They hear everything, and it's almost worse, we think, for dispatchers than it is for officers and field responders because we only have our imagination. We hear the awful story. We imagine what we think it looks like.
You hear the sound,
scene.
right?
Yes.
You hear the sound.
And so sometimes we don't know that it's not as bad as it sounds like. It's not as bad as it seems because once we hang up the phone, we move on to the next call. The next call may be grandma upset about, a neighbor's leaves in her yard. Sure. And we're switching from these very serious incidents to, routine incidents on a regular basis, hundreds and thousands of times a day.
That's completely amazing. I couldn't do that. I did mental health counseling, and I couldn't do this because, to me, you've got to have a real passion for what you do, and I don't know if I could get up to it every day. This is tough. Tough work.
It's the men and women of emergency communications. They are there taking all of those calls. They do a fantastic job. We often think dispatchers are kind of heroes behind the scene because they're not out there in front of the media. But again, we couldn't do it without them. The police department and fire department need the dispatchers, and they're just a great group of people.
Trust me, they are heroes behind the scenes.
We'll
be right back with Administrator Mike Spencer of the Emergency Communications Bureau right here on The Best in Blue.
Best in Blue.
Hey, I'm Williams Brack, co-host of Grind Set. The insight you gain from us and our guests will motivate you to take the leap into entrepreneurship. So stay with us. What's your grind set? And if you happen to miss some of our episodes, make sure to check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast provider.
Grind Set on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
KUDZUKIAN.
Hey, I'm Mike Spencer, Administrator of the Emergency Communications Bureau with the Memphis Police Department, and you're listening to The Best in Blue, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network.
We're back with The Best in Blue right here on the KUDZUKIAN Network. I'm DC, of course, sitting in with Administrator Mike Spencer of the Emergency Communications Bureau, and we have been Wow, we've been blown away, man. I didn't know you guys took as many calls, 1.2 million calls a year. You're doing it with less than 145 dispatchers. You got you some part-time dispatchers, and you got folks who are human. You don't have bots answering the phone, so they get to hear everything that possibly the officer is going to see when they get on the scene.
That's correct.
And then once that call is over, they've got to take another one.
It's definitely a roller coaster of emotions for them.
The citizens in this city, we tip our hat off to you guys because you're right. You guys are heroes behind the scenes that a lot of folks don't see.
Yes.
95% of calls that we talked about that are taken are answered within 20 seconds. I want to talk about some of those folks who have abused the system. And there's been some news around, not only here in Memphis, but around the country where people have made false calls. And let's talk a little bit about, not much, talk a little bit about how that impacts someone getting real help.
Yeah, I mean, everybody should realize that if you're making that phone call, then you're keeping somebody else from getting through, faster. If we're answering your call and it's a false call or a prank call, you're putting someone else that's waiting for the next person to answer the phone. So we wish we didn't have to say it, but we definitely want to encourage. Our other little bit of information is cell phones that are deactivated, that no longer have a SIM card. They're called non-initialized phones. People have phones in their drawers. They usually give them to a kid as a toy or to play games on. They need to realize that those phones can still call 911.
Oh, stop right there. You're telling me a phone without a SIM card in it.
Yep.
And just pop it on and let the baby play with it. If they hit the right numbers, they get 911.
Can still get emergency services. So those calls are really hard for our staff, especially when it's children, because if all you hear is a child, making child noises, goo-goo and a gaga, you don't know if there's an emergency, if there's someone else in the house that's passed out. You really don't know what's going on. So we work hard to try to figure out the location. We can get some basic location information from cell phones and try to send officers in the area to search for. But those are hard for employees to listen to and wonder, is this a real emergency?
I mean, and I've said this to every officer that's come in here. You all do a whole bunch with very little, and we expect you to do more. Now, even in your department, we're asking you all sometime to be counselors.
Yes.
Right. You guys are doing, and I've said this to the director, at some point we're going to just have to make you a social service agency of the city of Memphis.
Yeah. It's, people call 911 for everything. Our people, that's a challenge of the job. You can do it for 20 years and you will learn something every single day that you do it. You'll come across something that you haven't, some situation. So being flexible, using some common sense, using your training and policies, and just kind of make sure we're answering things the right way. But yeah, we're leaned on a lot for situations that you couldn't train for every one of them.
Speaking of training, before I get into that, you're listening to The Best in Blue right here on the KUDZUKIAN Network. But before we get into it, I want to make sure that folks understand that we are evolving as a society, right? And so I understand we've got a new tool that you guys have in our tool belt, and that is the text to 911 piece.
That's correct.
Let's talk about that initiative and how that's been rolled out here in our city.
So we're excited about it. In the 911 industry, text to 911 has been talked about for a lot of years in a row now. And last year, the city of Memphis and the Shelby County 911 district kind of made the decision to go ahead and move forward. So when this comes online, we'll be the first city in the state of Tennessee to offer text to 911 services.
We're number one for a change. Number one. Something good, y'all.
We're excited about it.
Wow.
The driver of this technology is the deaf, hard of hearing, and speech impaired communities, because those people didn't have access to 911 through the voice method. Usually they had specialized devices called telecommunications devices for the deaf, and that's how they communicated. But many of those communities have moved on to text. That's how they're communicating with each other. And so we wanted to make sure that the deaf, hard of hearing community has equal access to 911, and they can use that same device that's in their hand to contact emergency services.
This ought to be a training piece that the city could get into in terms of, and I know in the state of Tennessee, because if we're the first ones who are rolling this thing out, I imagine you guys are going to be on demand at some point to maybe go to Tri-Cities and talk to the police departments in Knoxville, Metro, and all these other places about how we've rolled this particular program out. Yeah,
the state's definitely paid attention to the efforts that we've put in. They've come back and actually offered to pay for some of the implementation, because the state of Tennessee had a different roadmap that they were going down, and I think our staff working with Carlton Ray at the 911 district really kind of cemented another path. And so once they made up their minds, the technical guys behind the scenes made it all work. So,
so working together, we got this thing, and a lot of us don't think about it. Those of us who are not hard of hearing, who don't have that type of issue in their lives, we don't think about it. I mean, you just say call 911. Anybody can call 911. Well, not anybody can call 911.
That's correct.
Because if you are speechless, then how do you communicate with that person? And then of course your dispatchers may get that, and they don't know what to do, right?
Yeah.
So this text to 911. Let's say I'm hard of hearing, and something's going on. I just simply hit 911, and there is an opportunity for me to text the message to your dispatchers, correct?
That's right. Yeah. So it's working today in our environment. We've done a lot of testing and training with it. So yeah, just the sender, you would send it to 911, text your message. You initially get a bounce back message from us, or the first message that comes back asking for some location information. And so, in 911, that's the most important thing to us is where are you at. If I know where you're at, if I don't get any more information, I can at least send field responders to you, immediately.
So the same thing happens again. Do you text back and say, do you need police or fire? Or ambulance.
Yeah. So that we'd say, do you need police, fire department, or an ambulance? Yeah. But we're going to concentrate, because it's text and the way that we're getting the information. We're going to concentrate on the location first, and then we'll move to you need police or fire department or an ambulance. That way, if we get disconnected for some reason, we at least have the address and we can start responders.
And this process that you said you've already done your beta test. Well, we called it beta testing back in the day.
Yeah.
It's not that now. I think I'm stuck in the 90s or the 70s or something.
I think they still call it beta testing.
Wow.
They do.
I feel pretty good about that now. I knew something. So the testing is completed. Yep. It's rolled out. Mm-hmm. And have we had at this point any particular usage of it so far? I mean, have we had any?
We have. So we work to get the reporting set up too. So every day, yesterday, I think we had up like 14 text messages.
Oh, wow.
So it's being adopted. We'll do some more public education campaigns, and we'll see the adoption go up. And being the first in the area, so we're the first in the state, first in the region, we don't have any baseline to base it on. I don't know if we're going to get 1,000 today. I don't know if we're going to get 100. So we're going to watch it really closely. We're going to see if our staffing is correct, see any adjustments that we need to make to handle it. But we'll be here, and we'll make sure that whether you're texting or calling 911, you get a quick response.
And the unique thing about this is that it's just not those folks who are hard of hearing, right? Because let's just say you have someone in a domestic situation, and I'm DC sitting there and I'm perpetrating whatever this violence is. Her getting on the phone may not be the optimum for her to call and say, I need police at my house, right? But she could sit there and text. And so I'm assuming that as a part of the PSA program, anybody in a unique situation, this is the opportunity you've got to say, I need help.
Yeah, and we don't like to think about it, but those situations happen. So if someone's in danger and it's not safe to call us and speak to us, you have this avenue. So you can text us information. You can get that to us.
Is there anything you'd like to leave with our listeners right now? Because all of this that's unfolded, I know there's stats out there that we could probably run off to all of the folks, but I think one of the big things they want to know is when I call, you're going to answer and you're going to send me help. Yeah,
and so I want to go back to text since that's new for us. So, I mean, we would definitely encourage people to not text and drive.
Sure,
and
that's right.
If you can call us, then do that. At this time, no emojis, no special characters, just plain text to us. You can't do a group text, so you can't text mom and 911 at the same time. That's not going to come through to us.
Okay.
Yeah, just some of those things. Those are some caveats that we'll work through as we get into this.
Well, let me tell you something. Mike, you have done a wonderful job. Tell your staff over there that there are people out here pulling for them every day. And we are so proud that they are answering these calls, those of us who have never used the system. I'm just glad to know there's somebody, in case I may ever have to use the system, that'll be there to say, look, we're going to get you what you need as soon as we can get them there to you.
I really appreciate it. I'll pass it along, and I'm appreciative of the team that I work with, because it's a great group of people that do a great job every day for the citizens.
Wow, you've heard it here first with Mike Spencer, the administrator of the Emergency Communications Bureau, right here on the Best in Blue. We'll be right back.
Best in Blue.
This is Lee Recruiter with the Memphis Police Department, Officer Kevin Moore. Join the Best in Blue. Our requirements are achievable. Our standards are the highest. Our officers are the finest. We are the Best in Blue. Join MPD.com.
Best in Blue.
Administrator Spencer talked a lot about the the makeup of his department. He talked about how there's better than 1.2 million calls taken on an annual basis by his dispatchers every year. And then he talked also about how 95% of those calls are answered within 20 seconds. Can you imagine that? When you call 911, there's someone that's going to be on the other end waiting to hear about your issue and get you the help that you need. That's what it's all about. Don't forget, text to 911. Use that service if you're in trouble, you cannot make a phone call, or if you have a disability like you're hard of hearing. Use text to 911. We've had a wonderful show today, so make sure you tune in to the next episode of The Best in Blue right here on the KUDZUKIAN Network. See you next time.
KUDZUKIAN Network.